Hey crocheters, this is Shannon with Dogwood Crochet, and today's video is going to be a bit different than my usual videos. I think this is my first time actually showing my face on YouTube. Usually I've just been doing my pattern tutorials or certain stitch or technique tutorials, but today I'm going to be talking about my crochet pattern design process and all of the steps that go into that. So if you're new here, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and let's get started. So over on Instagram, if you don't follow me already, go check out my Instagram, but many of you were talking about how this year one of your goals is to start designing your own patterns. So I had the idea that I wanted to create this video to share some of my knowledge and lessons learned. I started designing crochet patterns in October 2022, so a little over a year from when I'm recording this, and I have since designed more than 39 patterns. So I'll be talking through 6 steps to design crochet patterns. So the first step would be to find inspiration. The second would be to conduct research. The third step is to design the pattern. The fourth step is to write the pattern. The fifth step is to have the pattern tested. And then the sixth step is to publish it and make it available. So you might wonder why I'm sharing kind of like all of my secrets, and maybe this would just kind of create competition or enable other crocheters to have designs that might be competing with mine. I think the opposite, actually, and I think that everyone has something unique and beautiful to share with the world, and if I can help at least one person find their passion for designing crochet patterns and find that way to share their skills and their creativity with the world, I think it's just going to make the world a better place. So in my mind, it's not about creating competition, it's about enabling other people to find a sense of purpose and a sense of pride in the designs and creativity that they come up with through crochet. The first step, before we even get into those 6 steps that I mentioned, is you have to ask yourself why. Why do you want to design crochet patterns? And so for me, that why has been essential throughout this whole process, because if you want to be serious about being a crochet pattern designer, you're going to need to be consistent, and it needs to be something that you enjoy and that you have a good reason for doing. Otherwise, what's the point of doing it? So my why was basically just I wanted a productive and a creative outlet to spend my free time, and it also kind of stemmed from the fact that I really enjoy decorating my home, and I wanted to start making home decor pieces instead of buying them from the store. For step 1, in terms of inspiration, my first recommendation would be to figure out your niche and also recognize that that niche may change over time. But one way to figure out what niche you want to start with is base it on what you enjoy crocheting or what you enjoy in everyday life, and go from there. So like I mentioned earlier, I started out kind of focusing on home decor because that was what I enjoy crocheting. It might be totally different for you. Once you've found that niche, it's important to be adaptable and don't keep yourself in that box forever, but just use it as a starting point. As you release crochet patterns, you'll get a better sense for what your community likes or responds well to, and you can adapt your niche or your focus based on that. Next, in terms of finding inspiration for what you're actually going to design, there's a few different ways you can do it in certain orders. So the first would be to figure out what you want to design and then figure out how you want to design it. Or you could figure out how you want to design it and then figure out what. So for example, if you're going to figure out what you want to design first, one example for me is this sunglasses pouch that I designed, which a lot of people really, really love, which I'm very happy and grateful for. But I started out with the what. So I basically had a little sunglasses pouch already. It's just kind of this simple pouch that came with the sunglasses. And I thought, how can I make this better? How can I make it cute and personal and out of crochet? So I started out with the what for this. I knew that I wanted to make a sunglasses pouch that I could use every day. And then I figured out how. So I thought about, how do I want it to look? Do I want it to be simple and streamlined, or do I want it to be kind of frilly? And for me, this is something that I wanted to use every day and keep in my purse to protect my sunglasses. So I wanted it to be simple and not super bulky and not taking up a lot of space. And so I figured, I kind of like the shape of the pouch that it came with. So I'm going to stick with that. I also liked the drawstring design to close it up and kind of keep the sunglasses secure in there. So I stuck with that. And then I figured out, well, what kind of stitch do I want to use for this sunglasses pouch? And so basically I just kind of researched what are some unique stitches. I looked at stitches that I like the look of that would also give a good structure to the pouch. I didn't want anything that had a lot of holes or gaps in it because that would kind of defeat the purpose of protecting the sunglasses. So those were just kind of some of the things that went into my thought process when I designed this sunglasses pouch. And then of course, as I was making it, I wanted to make sure that it would be simple enough and easy for most crocheters. I aim to make most of my patterns beginner friendly. So I wanted to make sure that it consisted of easy to follow steps and that the construction and the assembly was all relatively straightforward. Another way that I look for inspiration, especially in terms of home decor, is with the seasons, or if, for example, Christmas just passed and we took down all of our Christmas decorations, and so now there's kind of these gaping holes and gaps and bare spots, like my bookshelf looks kind of bare now. That has presented an opportunity to me that I might identify a need or a gap in my house where, oh, maybe I want to crochet a table runner to put on this table, or maybe I want to crochet a pillow to put on the couch because I swapped out my Christmas pillows, or something like that. So you can also base your inspiration off of things that you need or kind of gaps that you identify. If you're looking to design amigurumi or crochet plushies, I don't personally do that, but I know that a lot of crocheters are interested in doing that. And so maybe a source of inspiration for those could be if you have a child in your life and maybe their birthday's coming up, or you just want to make them a gift. You could figure out what their favorite animal is, or you could research what some trending stuffed animals are, and you could kind of go from there in terms of identifying what type of plushie or amigurumi that you want to make. The next step is to conduct research or market research in your niche and see what's trending and what people are searching for. Otherwise, if you don't want to conduct research, you could just stay true to yourself and design what makes your heart happy. And a lot of times those have been some of my most successful patterns, are just the ones that I needed or wanted to make, and I made based on kind of my preferences or what I thought would look good. So it is important that you are not copying other crocheters or looking at other crochet pieces for inspiration. So when I'm looking for inspiration or doing research, I specifically avoid looking at other crochet items until I have a design solidified in my mind in terms of what I want it to look like, what stitch pattern I want to use, and things like that. And that helps me to make sure that my designs are unique and not copying someone else's work. However, once I have that design solidified in my mind, I do a bit of research to make sure that there's not something already similar out there, because I wouldn't want to inadvertently copy someone else or someone else's design. Once you've found your inspiration and you've done your research, the next step is to design the pattern. So the first part of designing the pattern would be to get the materials, figure out what type of yarn you need, what size hook you need, and any other materials or tools that you might need. Some people will sketch out their design and kind of draw out what they want it to look like. I've never really been great at drawing, so that doesn't really appeal to me, just because I personally think that however I draw it is not going to represent what's in my head. So I mostly just keep it in my head in terms of like what I want it to look like, but sometimes I might sketch out like I want it to have this kind of shape or this many rows of this type of stitch or something like that. And then once you have a sketch or just an idea in your mind, it's important to learn the stitch or technique, especially if it's new to you. So for this sunglasses pouch, I learned the Trinity stitch, which is the stitch that I used for these panels. So it was important that I was familiar with that stitch and I knew how to make it before I went about trying to design the pouch. So definitely take the time to learn whatever stitch or technique you need for the design and then practice it so that you're comfortable with it. And then from there, once you're comfortable, you can just start crocheting it. So as I'm crocheting, I'm taking photos at every step. Even if I think that I might not need them or it's excessive, you can always go back and delete your photos, but it's hard to go back to a step in your project and take a photo if you didn't take it already. So I'm always taking photos at every step. I'll pause throughout and I'll take videos of me working on the crochet project, and I'll use those videos for Instagram to help kind of market or promote the pattern. And then I also take notes at every row as I go along. So as I'm crocheting, I will write down what I did for each row. If it's the same, if I'm just repeating a stitch, I'll say like row 2 through X, do the Trinity stitch or something like that. And then I'll make sure once I've gotten to my final row, I'll go back to my notes and change out X for whatever that last row is. The first time that I crochet something, it's not always what I want. So sometimes I might have to frog or go back, or I change my mind. So I'm always revising the notes based on what the crochet product is actually looking like. I use the Notes app on my phone, so that has worked well for me, and you could use a paper and pencil or a different app or your computer or anything like that. I would just recommend that you use something that will be easy for you to access at any time in any place. So for me, I like the Notes app because I will always have my phone with me. So even if I'm working on a design outside of my house, I can still take notes on it and I can still reflect the changes or the progress that I've made on the design. Another thing that I do while I am still crocheting the item is I will make note of the dimensions and the number of rows as I go. So especially if it's something that requires assembly, I take all of the measurements before and after I assemble it. So for the sunglasses pouch, this consists of 2 rectangles, which I then join together like this. And so before I assembled them and joined them together, I made sure to measure out what each of those rectangles, what their dimensions were, because this border of joining them made them a little bit wider. So it was important to me to have both sets of dimensions just for my own knowledge and to kind of facilitate the pattern writing process as well as testing. And then once you're finished crocheting the item, I take photos and videos and I check my notes to make sure that they reflect all of the steps. And depending on the size of the project, you might want to make more of that item. So I've designed coasters where I still make coasters like every week, it feels like, just because it's fun for me and they're small, quick projects. Or there was another, I designed a blanket at one point and that was not practical to make multiple of. So that was kind of like a one and done because that blanket took me several weeks to finish. But if it's a small, relatively quick pattern, you might want to make multiple and follow along with your notes and your written pattern to make sure that it makes sense. The next step is to actually write down the pattern and put it into a format that will be close to your final version of the pattern. So I use a Word doc for writing my patterns. I know that other crochet designers use Canva. I personally just like using a Word document, and then at the end I convert it to a PDF. So I have a template for patterns that I follow so that I make sure that each of my patterns has all of the required elements. So the headings that I include in my pattern template would be materials, so listing what type of yarn is required, what size hook, if there's anything else required like a yarn needle or polyfill stuffing or anything else like that, listing all the materials. And then I have a section for abbreviations, so I make sure that any stitches that are used in the pattern are defined and abbreviated. If there's special stitches that are more complex, such as the Trinity stitch, I might write out the steps for what is included or what's involved with making the Trinity stitch. And then I have a notes section, so that includes any notes that the crocheter might need to know, like if the turning chain counts as a stitch or not, and anything else that might be kind of specific to that pattern. And then the next heading I have is approximate assembled measurements. So to give the crocheter an idea of what their finished product should end up, what size it should end up being. And then next I have gauge. So that is definitely important for making sure that any crocheters following your pattern are able to replicate it in terms of size. And then I have the pattern instructions, which just list all of the steps for how to make the item, and then any assembly instructions. And then finally at the end, I have disclosures in terms of like how to reach me if you have any questions. And then also my copyright disclosures stating that my pattern is protected by copyright and that I request other crocheters do not duplicate or distribute the pattern, all things like that. So I will put all of the information into the pattern template and make sure that it makes sense and that it's consistent, there aren't any typos, things like that. And then I'll add images of the finished products and any images that might show a certain step of the pattern that might be confusing. Another important thing for the written pattern template would be to include page numbers, especially if people like to print out their patterns and then the pages get mixed up. It's definitely helpful to have page numbers at the bottom. And then I also include the copyright date, and I include both the page number and copyright date in the footers of the Word doc so that it appears on every single page. So then the next step is to have your pattern tested. So a great way to gauge interest and have some kind of preliminary data on how the final pattern will be received is by putting out a pattern tester call. So a lot of times, just based on the number of people who are interested in testing, I can tell how well or not well a pattern might do when I release it. So I'll post the pattern tester calls to Instagram and find a handful of people to test the pattern and share their photos. Usually I choose anywhere between 3 to 10 testers. It really just depends on the level of interest and the complexity of the pattern. One tip that I have for posting tester calls to Instagram is you can use the hashtag crochet pattern testers wanted and hashtag crochet pattern testers needed. And a lot of pattern testers will follow those hashtags. So then when you post your tester call, they will be kind of notified, or it'll show up in their feed that you're looking for testers. Be sure to let me know if you'd like me to make a whole video on my pattern testing process, because I think that could definitely be helpful if that's something that you all are interested in. And then finally, regarding pattern testing, it's definitely an important step of designing a crochet pattern because it ensures that you're delivering a high quality pattern to your customers or your audience, because it ensures that other crocheters can follow and understand and replicate your pattern. And then finally, the last step is posting the pattern and marketing it. So once testing is done, I'll incorporate the feedback from the testers, convert the Word document to a PDF, and then upload it to Etsy. And then I primarily do all of my marketing through Instagram, but I also have YouTube and Pinterest and an email listserv that I will use to announce the pattern availability. And let me know if you would like a whole separate video on my posting and marketing process, because there's just so much more that goes into that we don't have time for in this video, but I'd be happy to make another video if you think it would be helpful. Otherwise, that's pretty much it. So once the pattern is posted and published, you can get a better idea for how your community responds to it, and you can adjust your future designs based on how well that pattern does. If your pattern is really being received well and your audience is loving making it, then you can use that as another source of inspiration for your future patterns, in terms of, well, the sunglasses pouch did really well, maybe I should make more accessories and maybe less home decor items, because my audience is really loving kind of the small, quick accessories. That's pretty much it. Thank you for watching, and like I said, let me know in the comments if you would like any other videos regarding this whole process. Let me know if you have any questions, and otherwise, thanks for watching. Please subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up. Thanks.